What is going on, guys? Hope you're all well. I've been meaning to make this video for a fair while now. However, I've recently been even more motivated to upload this because I've received a few messages from people saying that they've received messages themselves of someone claiming to be me. Now, I think this has come from the TGF live stream that recently happened, where they did the 24-hour Buried Alive challenge. During that stream, they asked people to give out their numbers so that they could call their subscribers to surprise them during the stream. I think someone drawing that was basically jotting down people's numbers that they were feeding into the live chat and texting random people pretending to be me. And they were even asking for their social medias apparently, and one girl even said that this person was asking to send them pictures and all sorts of inappropriate stuff. So that just really made me think even more and inspired me to get the confidence to upload this, to warn you guys and get it out there and address the situation. So without further ado, this is my catfish experience. It's going to be hard for me to structure this video, and I'm going to have to skip a lot of the minuscule details to save time so you guys don't get bored and this video doesn't end up being hours and hours long. But essentially, I met this girl about 4 to 5 months ago online via this site called Snog FM. If you guys don't know what that is, it's basically like the TV program Snog, Marry, Avoid, where you see people's profiles and you have options whether you'd like to snog, marry, avoid them, and you can leave a little comment, you can inbox them, etc. I found out about this site thanks to Ramal, because him and Jay used to grind for hours on end every night doing anything they could to promote TGF when they started out. So they would go on these sites and they'd get a conversation going with random people and find a way to promote their channel. So I thought, you know what, that's a good way, I'll try it myself. Just so happened anyway that this girl I was speaking to ended up catching my interest. She could hold a good conversation, and I thought, you know what, I might as well carry on speaking to her. I asked for her phone number, and this should have been the first alarm bell for me looking back. She said that she didn't want to give out her phone number straight away, which was fair enough, but she asked me if I had Kik, and I was kind of thinking, it's like, who uses Kik? If you guys don't know what that is, it's basically an app, almost like WhatsApp, but you don't need their phone numbers. You can just search their profiles, and you could start speaking to them. Ironically enough, I found out now, after this experience, that Kik is quite a common app for catfishes to use, so just be cautious and bear that in mind, guys. So anyway, I started speaking to her. I added her up on Kik, so I was like, you know, I might as well download the app. She seems like a cool girl, whatever. Didn't really think much of it. Spoke to her as you do, maybe for a few days before asking if she wanted to meet. She said that she lived in Worcester, so that's a fair distance, but not too far. Maybe about a 40-minute train journey from Birmingham. So she told me first that she actually had to have a knee surgery. That was kind of the first excuse. Not really an excuse, but she was more saying that after her knee surgery she'd be up for meeting me. But she didn't tell me that straight away. She said, yeah, she had to have this knee surgery anyway because she apparently ran a lot and she damaged her knee over the years from all the running. And I remember she said that she once jumped from a roof of a van or something onto the ground and ended up damaging her knee ligaments even more. So she said she had to have this operation. It was coming up. She said she'd be up for meeting me after that, after she recovered a bit, even if she was still on crutches or whatever. So she had that. We were going to meet, and then she was basically telling me how she was feeling ill closer to the time of our arrangement to meet after her knee surgery. And she ended up in hospital, blah, blah, blah. Then it escalated from her recovering from this knee surgery to having to have a blood transfusion because she told me that she was anemic and she has these problems, and now the hospital recommended for her to have a blood transfusion. So obviously that delayed our meet up even more. She went into hospital. This is probably about the second week in now, a couple of weeks in. She went back into hospital. I persuaded her to have it because she was unsure whether or not she wanted it or not, and I was like, you should go for it, you know, it's going to increase the chances of you being healthier and recovering better, blah, 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 so just go for it, even though there are risks with a blood transfusion. But she ended up having it, apparently. Obviously, I'm sure that these are all stories now that have been made up looking back, but there you go anyway. So she went for this blood transfusion, and she got out. We arranged to meet again. didn't happen because apparently she reacted to the blood transfusion, but it wasn't anything major, and it just made her feel completely debilitated and drowsy and tired or whatever and unwell. So she had to go back into hospital. There were loads of complications. She also told me how she was born in Sweden, so apparently she's Swedish, but she's lived in the UK for many years, and that her gran was planning to come over from Sweden to visit her while she was in the hospital, having these complications with the blood transfusion and recovering. So her gran came over. Obviously at this point it's quite a hectic time, so I'm like, maybe I should take a bit of a step back, give her some time to breathe and recover, and meet her after these problems have all come to an end, kind of thing. Her gran manages to fly over anyway, and she was also mentioning how her gran's tried to visit before, but she's found it difficult because she's quite old and quite fragile and unwell. So she manages it anyway. She comes to visit her in hospital. I was almost about to let a name sit there, but I try and want to avoid giving out any names just in case, just to be safe and protect people's identities, even though I'm sure that she's given me a false name anyway, and all this is made up on her part. So her gran comes over, visits this girl that I'm speaking to in hospital, and a few days later, while she starts to feel better, her gran falls sick. And it turns out the grandma ends up in hospital herself, and before you know it, she dies unexpectedly. And I was just like, what? She dies unexpectedly from what the doctors apparently diagnosed as a heart attack. She had a bit of a blood clot. At first they thought that they could sort it out with some pills, but that didn't work. And later that day, on the same day of her telling me that they found this blood clot in her grandma's heart area, she died later on. Keep in mind that I've actually spoken to this girl on the phone at this point. Haven't FaceTimed her or Skyped her during the day or anything, because she always would come up with an excuse to stop that from happening, talking about her having body dysmorphia or her feeling anxious. So the only real solid evidence I have of her being genuine at this point is hearing her voice. I've spoke to her on the phone plenty of times by this stage, and she's 100% a female unless she's got a soundboard or something. So I'm thinking, yeah, this is legit. And after her gran passed away, she called me up and she was crying and she seemed pretty devastated. And then I spoke to her for maybe a couple of hours on that day, and she calmed down a bit, and that sadness seemed to have faded looking back. But obviously during the time I was convinced that her gran actually did pass away, so I never really looked into any of this too much. But apparently I cheered her up a bit and she was okay. And so we rescheduled our meet. Lo and behold, it didn't happen. Didn't happen because she was unwell again, I think, and she had to go back into the hospital because of something to do with the blood transfusion or her knee surgery. And she passes out a few times. Like, she'd always tell me how she would pass out and she doesn't eat properly, and she'd sometimes bang her head when passing out. So anyway, she ended up in hospital again. On one of the days I thought, you know what, let's make a surprise trip to the hospital and go and see her. So I made the effort to get a train late at night from Birmingham to Worcester to go and visit her. And on the train, some guys who were sitting next to me, they just so happened to ask me what I was getting up to. I said that I was going to Worcester to meet this girl who I've never seen before, only spoke to her online or on the phone to, and that she's apparently in hospital in Worcester, and I was going to basically pay a surprise visit. And I asked them if they would know the most likely hospital that she would be at for someone who's just had a blood transfusion or knee surgery, and they said that it would be the Royal Hospital in Worcester. There's only really one main hospital. So I got off at the train station in Worcester. I went to a taxi that was waiting outside. I asked him as well just to make sure what the most likely hospital would be for someone who had a blood transfusion and knee surgery, and he said again there's only really one main hospital, which is the Royal Hospital in Worcester. So I ended up going to that hospital, walked in one of the receptions, asked them if they knew of the girl who was staying there. So at this point I know her name, I know that she lives in Worcester, and I know some of her family members' names, and obviously what's going on with her in terms of health and why she would be in hospital. So I gave them that details, but apparently that still wasn't enough. Also, I knew her apparent birthday, but it still wasn't enough because I had to know her exact address. But I did explain that I came all the way from Birmingham and the situation, blah blah blah. So they tried their best to find her, but they couldn't find anything, which I thought was odd. I went back to the taxi guy, said that it failed, and he said that there was another reception around the back of one of the other buildings. So I tried that. They were a bit more helpful. They really wanted to try and find this person, but again, no trace. However, they did say that because I didn't know her full details, it was harder for them to try and narrow down the search. So I thought maybe that's why, maybe she is in hospital. But anyway, whilst I was in hospital, I actually lost signal on my phone. Came back outside, gained signal, received a text from her saying that she got out of hospital and it was just on her way home. So I thought, oh shit, well I'm already in Worcester now, let's call her up. So I called her up, no answer. I was like, this is odd. Started to get a bit, worried, like, oh god, what's going on here? Why can't you just answer your phone? Called her again several times, messaged her, nothing, absolutely nothing at all. That night was hectic. It was honestly hell. I walked back from the hospital to the train station. Good half an hour to 40-minute walk, maybe even longer. My brain was so confused at this point that I was just mad and just didn't know what to think. I couldn't understand why she wasn't answering her phone, and I was thinking, oh god, I've come all the way to Worcester for nothing. So I walked back from the hospital to the train station to find out that I'd missed my last train. So I was stuffed, and a taxi would have been ridiculously expensive. So I had to get my mom, bless her, to come and actually pick me up because I'd missed my last train and there were no buses running or anything. So she came all the way from Birmingham to Worcester to pick me up. I told her about the situation. When I was waiting for her, I was getting so mad. She was stuck in traffic. I was honestly waiting in Worcester for a good 2 to 3 hours, and I was just like so upset. She still wasn't replying to me. She wasn't getting back to me. I dropped her a message obviously at this point and told her that I was actually in Worcester planning to come and give her a surprise visit. I couldn't understand why she wasn't getting back to me. Mum came anyway, told her the situation, went back home. The morning after, I received a text from her. She was apologising. She said that it broke her heart to find out that I was in Worcester, that I'd made that effort to come and see her, and that she wasn't around. She said her excuse was basically that her phone died not so long after texting me, that she fell asleep in the car on the way back, and that one of her brothers actually had to drag her out the car and put her into bed, and she was just gone. So she couldn't answer any of my calls or anything because she was just basically passed out and her phone died. By this point, already so much had went on that I should have just thought, nah, this is complete nonsense, and just left it. But there's always that element of doubt, and you want to trust someone, especially when there's such drastic situations going on, such as the passing of her grandma and her having knee surgery and her having all these problems. You feel that sympathy and empathy, and you want it to be real, because you wouldn't think someone would lie about such things. So yeah, and I was just trusting her that this would be the case, that she wouldn't lie to me about it, but I really was suspicious. Anyway, she apologised, and I still was really suspicious about it. I was like, no, I didn't know what to think, but I gave her the benefit of the doubt anyway. Carried on speaking as normal, rescheduled once more. Lo and behold, the reschedule never happened. She felt unwell on one of the days that we were meant to meet, and then the day after that she was convinced we would meet on, apparently she went downstairs in the morning and she found a bunch of suitcases and packed bags that her family had prepared, ready to go to Sweden. But she wasn't expecting to go to Sweden until a few days after that, so we were convinced we could meet before she had to go away for her grandma's funeral, because it takes a while for the body to get sent over to Sweden, etc., and for the funeral arrangements to be made. So we were convinced we had enough time. But then it just escalated even more. She told me that the reason why was because they had a call from their family in Sweden saying that her uncle had now developed a brain tumour and they had to go over in an emergency. So they had to go over. I remember speaking to her on the phone about it, and she was completely devastated. She was just saying that she didn't blame me if I didn't want anything to do with it, because I would have to wait until after she came back to Sweden, even though she told me that she was only going to stay for a few days, and then more stuff happened, which I'll get on to briefly in a bit. I said, oh no, it's fine. I gave her the benefit of the doubt again. I think it's genuinely because I really enjoyed speaking to this girl, and her qualities in terms of what she got across was kind of everything I like in terms of conversation, and her ambitions, and this sounds ironic to say, but her kindness and generosity, which is obviously all too good to be true now. This is why I just kept giving her chances, which I've learnt now not to do. But anyway, so she had to fly to Sweden. She went with her family. So I'll give you guys an idea of how big her family is as well. She's got 3 brothers, one sister who she doesn't get on with at all well. She's had problems with her. She'd always tell me how they were fighting, etc. So they don't get on at all well. She's got her mom and her dad. So they flew over to Sweden. They're only meant to stay a couple of days. I'm going to try and skip through some of the details because so much has happened. But essentially, they're only meant to stay a few days for the funeral or what have you, to make sure okay, blah blah blah. They had the funeral, that went okay, even though she told me that she was having loads of arguments with her sister. Sister was blaming her for the death of her gran, all this sort of stuff which I just couldn't believe, so I should have seen what was to come. They didn't make their first flight home because her mum apparently suffered a pseudo seizure due to stress and what have you because of her mum passing away, so they didn't make that flight. Then a few days later when they rescheduled, and apparently flights are quite hard to get from Sweden to the airport that they flew from, which I think she said was something like Bristol Airport or yeah, it was Bristol Airport, and on the way back they were looking for flights to either Bristol again or London. They rescheduled a flight which they couldn't get for a few days time, so they had to stay in Sweden even longer. She was even more upset. I remember speaking to her, blah blah blah. I used to WhatsApp phone call her so it wouldn't charge me, so I'd speak to her most days, most nights, and yeah, she genuinely seemed upset about it. All of it really did come across as genuine. I have to say, the way she played it was pretty incredible. I'll give her that. Anyway, you can probably guess what's coming. The rescheduled flight never worked out because her sister apparently beat her up. Like, it sounds so dramatic. This is literally what's come from her. So her sister beat her up. She ended up with broken ribs. The way it happened was basically that she passed out because she passes out because of her blood and not eating properly. And her sister took advantage of that and started kicking her while she was on the floor. And then her brother saw and had to stop it. And then she ended up in hospital and obviously she misses the flight. Then it escalates from that to her developing pleurisy and pneumonia, and I was just like, oh my god, come on. I was already really suspicious. Also, by this point, her mom had actually created a Kik profile to message me during a lot of the stages where she ended up in hospital, saying, oh, this has happened to Abby, blah blah blah. So I was led to believe that this was actually her mother speaking to me now, saying that she'd keep me updated while she was in hospital or whatever. But yeah, it just escalated so quickly, and she got pneumonia and pleurisy. She was in hospital. She was even telling me how she was like so close to death at one point, and her mom was saying it was looking really bad and all of this. But she did get out of it, even though it lasted a bloody long time. So she was in Sweden for probably around a month or something. It's ridiculous the amount of stuff that happened over that time. But obviously I have to skip a lot of the intricate details just so I can keep this video at the best length that I can. I don't want to drag it out for too long because I don't want to bore you guys, but I wish I could tell you everything. But the amount of excuses, these are just the excuses that stand out and the delays that stand out in my mind. So yeah, she was in Sweden for longer. She potentially could have died. She finally came back, even though it took a while because more excuses happened after that. I remember her dad doing a disappearing act in Sweden and her saying that she had to go out to find him because he didn't tell her or any of the family where he was going, and he was like missing for a day or two. It was ridiculous. And then she ended up doing a disappearing act herself and never messaged me, and it was just crazy. But eventually she got back to England. She took a flight. I said I'd meet her happily at the airport. Of course that didn't happen. Of course that didn't happen. Didn't happen at all. Also, it's worth mentioning that while she was in Sweden, I did ask her to, at least take a few photos. We tried to Skype, obviously, and that's where her whole body dysmorphia and anxiety thing came in. And it obviously never happened. However, I was speaking to her lots on the phone, and she sent me a few photos, which obviously I was led to believe were in Sweden, which, yeah, but it wasn't many, and it wasn't really of her doing stuff in Sweden. Just looking back at the whole thing now, like, even if I didn't ask for photos, I think you naturally do that anyway. If I'm on holiday, so if I go to Italy or somewhere, and I'm speaking to even just a friend, like, I want to keep them posted, I'll take photos of the sea or something, or just like what I'm doing, or Snapchat if I manage to get internet. You know what I mean? You just keep your friends and that posted, even if they don't ask you for it. And I got minimal amount of photos even when I had to ask, and it just should have rang so many alarm bells. I was really suspicious at this point. I just still gave her the benefit of the doubt because I had hope, which was stupid, I guess, looking back now. Anyway, this video is becoming quite long, so I'm going to try and skip some of the details now and just get straight to the point. So she came over, she finally booked the flight back home, never ended up meeting her at the airport. I won't jump into the excuses side of things, but it didn't happen. Meant to meet her the day after. What happened was, she apparently drove all the way to mine. I was waiting for her for a whole day. It just became so stupid. There was apparently traffic first, that's why she was running late, and then she ended up feeling really dizzy and unwell in the car, so she had to pull over. She ended up apparently getting close to mine. She fell sick, and so I actually went to try and find her. I couldn't find her anywhere. She was trying to give me details because she said she was too unwell to drive, so I was basically going to go and pick her up, and she just wasn't around. She just lied, basically. She obviously just looked on Google, looked at a close location to me, said that she was there, and nothing made sense because she was like, oh, I can see there's a golf course, and there's a golf course and a cemetery and all of this and some tyre place, and she just couldn't even give me any names properly. So I just knew it was a load of rubbish from this, but I still, you know, made the effort to try and find her. So I literally went to the cemeteries that I know that are nearby and the golf courses that I know, and there's not many, and there's only really one tyre place, which is like a quick fit. There's a couple of independent ones, I think, and she's nowhere to be found anyway. So that never happened. And then I was just like, yeah, at this point I'm just convinced anyway she's a complete catfish. But, of course, there's a part of me that's still a tad hopeful, so give her the benefit of the doubt again. This is at least a couple months into it by now. I mean, she spent a whole bloody month in Sweden, apparently, so this is probably like the 3rd month in or something. We reschedule again. We have problems, even though she's back here. Like, she's feeling unwell. She's got issues at home at this point. There's loads of things going on. I'm not going to go into too much detail. Now, I'll skip forward in time quite a bit to recent events. Well, I say recent events, towards the end of our communication. I was going to use the word relationship, but it's not a relationship by any means. You know, you have a relationship with your friends and stuff. This I can't class this as a relationship. This is just communication, because looking back, it blows my mind how someone could do this to someone else. But yeah, so skip forward towards the end of this. We were meant to meet one last time. Of course it doesn't happen. I said that I would get the train to Worcester. She'd meet me at the station, blah blah blah. I even said to her, just give me your address so I can go to yours. I was like, there's no need to meet me at the station. She wouldn't give me her exact address, so I was convincing myself that she was catfishing me at this point anyway. But you know, after all this time, I really wanted to see who this person was anyway, and you know, I might be pleasantly surprised. She could actually meet me at the station. She could be who she said she was, but I was expecting another excuse. Lo and behold, she did give me an excuse. She said that she was going to get ready to meet me, and then she completely stopped messaging me after that. No messages were going through to her, blah blah blah. So I was kind of preparing for the worst in my mind. I knew this was going to happen. Her mum ended up messaging me on her profile on Kik, saying, oh, I've tried to get in touch with my daughter. She's not answering, blah blah blah. Weren't you meant to meet her today? And I was like, yes, I was meant to meet her today. I said that I'm not hearing anything off her either, and she said she's going to try and look for her because she wasn't at home or anything. I think she was at her grandma's or something. So her mum went to look for her. Just so happens that she finds her in a field somewhere, having overdosed on pills and alcohol or something. So she ends up in hospital. She's out for the longest time. I already know she's a catfish at this point. However, I don't want to just slam that at her, kind of just say, oh, I know you're a catfish, because that's just probably going to put them off straight away, and if I say that, then it causes tension, and she's probably just going to block me. So I wanted to try and get through as best as I can. So she's in hospital for the longest point, so I'm trying to work out how I can say it in the best way so that she doesn't block me and it's not all for nothing, and I can kind of get closure. Like, if you've ever seen the show Catfish, they meet, you know, the catfishes. So that's what I guess I wanted to do in my mind, just to have some form of closure. Never happened though. I went with it for a bit, but then it just got too far because she was in hospital for the longest time after having overdosed. Because she was near her grandma's when it happened, and that wasn't in Worcester. She actually was planning to go from her grand's to Worcester to meet me on that day. She ended up in a hospital that wasn't close to home, so they had to try and organise a transfer. The transfer never happened, and she ended up further down south near Cheltenham or something, which just didn't make any sense to me. Worcester's north of Cheltenham, and as soon as her mom said that, like, oh, they couldn't work out a transfer to a hospital in Worcester because they didn't have enough beds, I I should have known that was already just complete utter lies. But then to end up down south in a hospital further away just didn't make any sense at all. So I was almost ready to call her out about it, but obviously it would have been speaking to her mum at this point because he still hadn't come around. She was in a coma or something. So I ended up saying to her mum, can I call you on the phone? Can I speak to you? And then she said, oh, I'm having to have my phone repaired, blah, blah, blah. But has a phone at this point. Actually ripped out the SIM card apparently in her old phone, so her mum had to get her a new one. And to be fair, she did change her number, so she probably has multiple phones and multiple SIM cards, because some catfishes do, and literally the lengths that they go to it's ridiculous. So I said, oh, okay, I tell you what, I'll call phone and you just answer on phone. So she was like, yeah, I'll see if I can get it. And obviously I was expecting an excuse because it's not her mom. So her excuse was, oh, I'm just speaking to the doctors now and they're saying that her pneumonia might have come back. So that was kind of the final straw for me. I was like, all right, no more, I'm wasting my time too much. So I ended up sending a voice message, because me and the girl would used to voice message as well as phone calls. We'd do everything to communicate with each other. So I ended up sending a voice message to her email, calling her out about it. I won't go into detail regarding the words that I said, but I was just basically like, I've got my suspicions, I know this has happened, I know this isn't real, blah blah blah. However, I would love to meet you, even if you're not who you say you are, just to have some form of closure on why you did it, and just to kind of just tell you how it affected me mentally, and to give you advice and to tell you not to do it to anyone else. Her mum listened to the voice message, and I remember her saying, oh, you'll understand why I can't play this to her. And I was just like, for God's sake, it was just complete nonsense. So that just delayed things and made things even more difficult. I said to her, I know that she's not in hospital, blah, blah, blah. So it went from that to her actually saying that it was a lie. So her mum was admitting that she was lying to me, because I said to her that I had called the hospitals. There was no trace of this person. There was no trace of her being in any of the hospitals that she was apparently at. Her mum ended up admitting that she'd been lying to me. So then the story switched from that to her actually messaging me herself, so she was never in the hospital. And then she said that she had to make up those excuses because she had problems with her ex, and her ex was threatening her, and she thought if she'd make up these excuses I would feel better about the situation, because she was worried about me getting mad if I was to find out that she was still involved with one of her exes, and she had this sort of relationship with him where they're still trying to figure stuff out. Apparently he's really forceful. I know this kind of stuff does happen in some relationships, which is like so sad. This guy apparently just rocks up to her house, forces himself on her, doesn't want her to speak to anyone else. So this was why she couldn't meet me, and it just shows how once I figured out the situation, she had to come up with another excuse quickly, and obviously I knew it was just all too much. Just it couldn't be true. So I basically say to her, look, you can either meet me, find a way to meet me. I even said to her, if this was happening, there would still be a way, because your ex isn't around your house all the time. He's not watching over you like some guardian devil or something. It just doesn't work like that. So I said, you can always find even just 2 minutes in the day to meet me. And she's like, oh, I'm really sad that you think I'm not who you say I am. And she literally tried to turn it on me, and she's done this in the past when I've had my suspicions and kind of said it, because I've briefly brought up my suspicions before, but not in such a way that I'm kind of giving her an ultimatum, and she kind of turns it on me and says, I can't believe you think this, which doesn't make any sense, because if she was that concerned about how I think of her, then she would do everything she could have to prove to me that she was real. She could have took 30 seconds to FaceTime me or something, and it's just, I don't know, it's crazy, it's absolutely ridiculous. So yeah, she tried to turn it on me. She's like, I can't believe you're thinking this of me. I just said to her kind of like, oh, whatever, you know where I am, if you want to meet me, if you want to speak, if you want to carry on speaking to me. I said, I'll happily speak to you if you've got stuff to sort out, if you want to sort stuff out before you meet me, then, you know, I can be patient a bit longer. She said that she wanted to sort some more stuff out, but then it ended up being so that the stuff she had to sort out was still to do with her excuse that she had an ex, and she was trying to sort that out. So it was just lie after lie. She never ended up building the courage to actually meet me, even though I kind of tried to reassure her and say, look, obviously I'm upset, obviously this has affected me, however I would really like to get some closure for both of our own sakes as well, because this has been going on for so long. I've got my hopes way too up. It hasn't happened yet. Basically the way this ends now is that on one of the days I said to her, right, this is kind of your last chance, I can meet you today, or that's it, I don't want anything to do with it. She was like, oh, I can't meet you today, and I'd hope you'd understand why. And I was like, why, what is it? And she's like, oh, my uncle's died, even though he managed to have surgery while he was in Sweden. I think I forgot to mention that part actually, but he managed to get surgery in Sweden and it was successful or whatever, and he was recovering. And it just so happened that he died, so I was like, no, this is nonsense. And I kind of just knew that she wouldn't build up the courage anytime soon to meet me. So that was that. And then I said to her, basically, I don't think that's happened. I don't think your uncle's died. Because she gave me that as soon as I gave her that ultimatum. So as soon as I kind of put that pressure on her to meet me, she came up with that. So it's just rubbish. It wasn't like one of the first things she said, so so I said to her, like, basically, I'm done, but I'll always be here. You always know where I am. Like, you've got my email address, you've got my phone number. You can drop me a message if you ever do build the courage to meet me and ever want to apologise for any of it. I'm even thinking myself, I'm sorry if this is all real, if this was all real, but I know it's not, because I know out of those 4 months or however long it's been now, she could have found 5 minutes in any one of those days out of that period of time to meet me. She could have found a minute to FaceTime me or something where I can see her face clearly and see it's her. So there you go, guys. It's absolutely crazy. I'm going to end this video giving you guys one piece of really important information that I actually forgot to mention, which is crucial in the story. On the day that she overdosed, so on that day that she was meant to meet me, where her mom ended up messaging me saying that she found her in a field, blah, 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 I actually said to her that I was already on the way to meet her at that point. So I said, can you give me your address? Can you give me your postcode, your address, whatever? And then I can go to your house, and if any of your family's in, I can just, you know, stay with them or something. So I basically said to her that I was already on the way, but I wasn't. But I thought, you know what, let's just say to her that I am, so I can see what she says regarding an address or what have you. So she gives me a postcode, but she doesn't give me a door number. Who doesn't give their door number? So she didn't give me her exact address, just the postcode and the road. Me and my mum end up going to this address. We go there just to check the area, maybe find some answers. We end up knocking on this door that's down the road that she apparently lives on, because the road isn't that long. It's one of those little residential roads, so it's a dead end. So I was thinking, I'll kind of knock on every bloody house if I have to. We spoke to this guy who lived in one of the houses down the road, and I was saying to him, I was giving him descriptions about the girl I'm speaking to see if he would know where she potentially may live. I was like, do you know this girl? Gave him the name, said that she walks around a Dalmatian, a dog called Dexter, blah, blah, blah. Now this is where it gets interesting. He was like, that house down there has a Dalmatian. I'm like, oh shit. So we go to the house, and funnily enough, it's the house on the road that I thought would most likely belong to her, because she says to have a big family. This house that he pointed out was the biggest on the road, had the most cars outside, so it would make sense to be her house. I get my mum to knock on the door, because I'm thinking, if the people inside see me and they know that they've catfished me, because they know who I am, I've sent her loads of photos, she's seen me obviously, then maybe they'll get scared and not answer. So my mum knocked on the door. Bearing in mind, she knocked on the door earlier before she actually spoke to the guy down the road, and this Polish woman came out and said to come back later because the owners weren't in or something, because basically the house is used for lodging, so uni students stay. But we didn't know this at this point, but she just said to come back later. So anyway, this is the second time now after the guy said that this house has a Dalmatian. Anyway, she knocks on the door and this Dalmatian comes running out. I'm round the corner and the owners are back at this point, and this woman comes to the door and is like, Dexter, Dexter. So obviously my mum was in shock, and she comes around the corner to me and she's like, the dog's called Dexter, the dog's called Dexter. I'm freaking out, and my mum says she's invited us in. So we tell her briefly what happened, and she invites us in. There's this guy there, young dude, a bit taller than me, and it's ironic because I'm quite tall, I'm about 6'1", 6'2", and this guy probably about 6'4", and that's exactly the height that one of her brothers is. So I'm a bit suspicious already. I'm like, what is going on here? But none of them look nervous in the house. Like, it was her, the owner. She's married, so her husband's there. They're a fairly old couple, and there's this uni student there who's quite tall, and then the other uni student who's living in the house comes down from upstairs to see what's going on as well. But none of them are like nervous. I'm like thinking, have any of you catfished me? I don't understand what's going on. But anyway, they all want to know the story, so I tell them what's happened, and they're like, oh no way, that's crazy, that's insane. And anyway, none of them have a clue. They're just basically saying that it could be someone around the area who's lonely, because apparently everyone knows that dog Dexter. Everyone around the neighbourhood knows that dog when they take him for walks and stuff. So he's quite a popular dog. They were basically saying that they just couldn't figure out who it was. I told them the name, told them what's been going on, even showed them photos that she sent me, photos of her, and yeah, they didn't know the face, they didn't know the name, and that was that. And it was the most bizarre, insane thing. And they were basically saying how it could either be someone around the neighbourhood, as I said, or someone on their Facebook, just some lonely person who's got links to them. But then, when I went away and thought about it, I was like, maybe it could be a student who's stayed there in the past, who's used their house and their dog for inspiration and stuff. And so, yeah, that was crazy. So obviously by that point, I knew it was a catfish anyway. And then, when I gave her these chances to meet me, it never happened. And obviously you guys know the final straw, which was her saying that her uncle died, so still going back to her excuses. And by this point she had contradicted herself a few times. I didn't even need to point that out. All I wanted was to just meet this person and to get some closure. And yeah, it obviously never happened, hasn't happened yet. I don't know if she'll ever message me in the future. I have no idea. It's crazy. But honestly guys, the way this has affected me mentally, it's insane. I'm finding it way more difficult to trust people. I'm way more cautious. My depression and mood is completely off the charts after it. I consider myself a fairly strong person as well, so I like to battle through things, and I don't like letting things get to me too much. And I'm just thinking, if this was another person, you never know how it could have affected them, because it affects every individual differently. It's extreme to say, but I honestly believe if it went on for longer, if it was a different person it happened to, they could have ended up, potentially killing themselves, finding out that it's not real. And honestly, it's affected me so bad, so badly mentally. And I don't think she even gets that, because I think a lot of catfishes, they find it hard to find empathy and sympathy, and they don't understand what they've done. They believe their own lies, and they're literally deluded. They just don't realise what they've done, how they've impacted the other person, and they do it because they're lonely themselves, and it feels good because maybe they feel like they can't get a physical, real relationship with someone, so it's the best that they can get in terms of communicating over a phone and pretending to be someone else, and it makes them feel good about themselves. And it's just wrong in every way. And honestly now it's affected me quite bad. I'm devastated. I'm devastated because the girl who I originally thought I was speaking to was such an amazing person to me, and I couldn't kind of believe my luck in a sense that I was speaking to someone who had a lot in common with me, who had so much ambition, who supported me, who pushed me with her words, who made me feel good about myself, and kind of went above and beyond with the words that she used. Everything was so good and so positive before she started coming up with really the excuses on why I couldn't meet her, and then things just evolved and turned. But because she made this amazing first impression, I just wanted to keep hold of her, I guess. And it was the wrong thing to do. There are no words to describe the mental impact it's had on me. However, I felt extremely motivated to get this up, to find the courage to speak about this, especially after what happened recently with someone pretending to be me and messaging other people, getting their hopes up and asking for inappropriate things. I think that's just bang out of order. So if this video can help anyone and at least make people aware, then I think that's a good thing. I think I'm doing something good there, doing the right thing, even though this has been quite damn hard to speak about, to say the least. I guess the moral of the story is to just keep your wits about you guys, and if any of you do online dating, and let's face it, like, so much in today's society is based around technology. Who doesn't? Who kind of hasn't used Tinder, even if you don't use it anymore? Who hasn't downloaded Tinder? Who doesn't use dating apps, or even like Facebook, and just pops up to someone new to try and speak to? I guess what I'm trying to say is just take everything with a pinch of salt, and just be careful with people, with new people, with strangers, until you've actually met them face to face and you know it's them for real. And even then, still be careful until you get to know them properly, because anything can happen. It really, really can. You don't think it's going to happen to you. You don't think it's going to happen to you. So there you go, guys. That's my catfish experience. I've learnt my lesson. I've learnt my lesson from it. I'm going to be more careful in future. Unfortunately, it's broke my trust, as I've said. So I don't know how it's affected me now in terms of potential relationships with other people in the future. I feel like I want to outro it like all my other videos. You know, if you've enjoyed, please smash the like button and all that kind of nonsense. But it's not that type of video, so I don't know how to end this other than to really say just take care of yourselves, guys, and I'll see you for the next video, whatever that will be. Alright, peace.